How to Make It, der Podcast für Musiker, die wirklich etwas erreichen wollen. Präsentiert von Adamant Music. Herzlich willkommen zum zweiten Teil der 16. Episode von How to Make It. In dieser Folge bekommen wir vom SubmitHub-Gründer Jason Grishkoff einen sehr praktischen Einblick in die Plattform selbst. Er gibt uns extrem hilfreiche Tipps, wie man die Chancen erhöhen kann, auf Playlists, Blogs und Ähnlichem zu landen, wann man die eigenen Songs am besten pitchen sollte und was bei SubmitHub in Zukunft noch so kommen wird. Also viel Spaß! Let's get to the platform itself. Do you have, like from your experience or data, do you have any insight on when artists should submit their music to bloggers, curators, etc.? Like, is there a certain time frame when these outlets would like to receive new tracks, for example, 2 weeks prior to the release, on release day, etc.?
Generally speaking, they're all quite flexible. Curators can indicate their preference for when they want to receive songs. So you could say, I don't want songs that are older than 2 months, but I also only want songs that are coming out within the next month. So they can set themselves up like that, which means that you as a submitter don't actually have to think about it or worry about it. If you want to start submitting your song a month before release, go for it, because it's only going to show you the curators who are open to that. But a different answer to the question comes more from the fact that Friday is release day worldwide. And it's sort of been synced up. But what you'll see on SubmitHub is that there are 2 times as many submissions on a Friday as there are on a Sunday. It's huge, so, the spike on Friday. And so if you're an independent artist, I highly recommend submitting on Sunday or Monday morning. If you're submitting on Friday, you're going to be competing with all of the professionals in the industry who are following that Friday release day. Because most independent artists don't even know about the Friday release day, but all the majors know about it. And all the publicists know about it. And so the songs that you're competing with on a Friday are probably going to be better than yours. On Saturday, you're still competing with them because they have 48 hours until they expire. And so they're still in the system. By Sunday, they're starting to fade out. And on Monday morning, those professionals, the labels, whatnot, they're not going to be online sending music. They're just getting back to work. So it's a slightly different answer to your question, but I would say that submitting on a Monday is a way safer bet than submitting on a Friday.
That's amazing advice. I really didn't think about that as well. So like probably in the last... Every release we had on Adamant Music was, I really submitted on release day to really get this, like, this impact on the release day itself to really drive the algorithm, but it totally makes sense to not do that.
The other thing to follow up here with that is that you've probably seen not everyone shares it the moment they approve it. I myself don't do this. I approve a song. It takes me 5 or 6 days until I get to it. And that's probably because I have 4 or 5 other songs that I have to get to. So I endlessly have this list of about 5 or 6 songs that I've approved that I need to blog that I haven't done yet. And then every few days I go, okay, hold on. I need to share some of these before the list gets out of hand. So I think I have a turnaround time of 5 or 6 days, sometimes more. And you've probably experienced that, especially with bloggers. They tend to set aside time for blogging and they don't do it very quickly. With Spotify playlisters, you'll definitely find a higher proportion who approve and then share, approve and then share.
Do you have a few practical tips for musicians using SubmitHub on how to achieve better results aside from submitting on Mondays? Like using the platform, using the features, or also like improving their submission, their press text that they send to bloggers, etc. Do you have any insights on that?
Yes, I do. Starting in reverse, submitting your press text is going to be one of the least important things. It's definitely good to have some information there, but having a fully developed EPK with all that type of stuff is not going to help you, because SubmitHub puts a lot more emphasis on the song itself. And so then the question comes down to how well you're targeting that song to the curators. And there are aspects of SubmitHub that you can leverage to improve those results. The biggest one for me is a thing called the genre match score, which is something that I cleverly wrote. I don't even know what's in it, but it's magic. When you are uploading your song, SubmitHub asks you to indicate which genres you would say your song falls into. For some people, they can pick the exact genre, but for many, it's an overlap between 2 or 3 genres.
It's difficult, yeah.
And you would say, okay, well, there's some future bass influence, but this is also a bit EDM, and there's also a break beat in there. So I'm going to mix those 3 together. And then what I do on my end is I look at all of the curators and I say, okay, let's pull together the curators who take EDM, breakbeat, and future garage or bass or whatever, put them all together in a bundle. And then I'm going to see who enjoys this combination of genres the most. It's possible that you've chosen 3 completely divergent genres and there isn't much overlap. But in most cases, a lot of curators will like at least 2 out of 3 of those genres. And then I can sort of determine how likely they are to approve it. So Indie Shuffle, ironically, actually has a really low score for indie rock. And we publish a lot of indie rock, but the reason is that we get sent so much indie rock. And so what the genre match score there is trying to say is, hey, Indie Shuffle likes indie rock, but you're actually going to have a pretty tough time getting approved by them if you send them a song in that genre. So the genre match score, anything above an 8 out of 10, is something I would definitely focus on. It means that that curator is going to like the type of music you're sending them. And that, I think, is the most important starting point.
So once then it comes down to the track.
Yeah. Well, and once you've honed in on that genre, there are a couple more clues you can look for. To the right of each curator, you'll see a button to listen to some of their recently shared songs. So that'll give you an idea of whether their interpretation of your genre is the same as your interpretation. The other thing you'll see is just towards the bottom of their listing will be a note that says they tend to also like these genres. And so you can see that if they like a bunch of other genres that are similar to the ones you've chosen, perhaps not the same, but just similar, it gives you a better idea of the type of stuff that they enjoy covering. And so if I choose indie rock and I see a blog pop up and it says, yeah, they like indie rock, but most of the time they approve hip hop and dubstep, it's a strong clue that you should probably, they're probably not going to have an 8 out of 10 genre match score to begin with, but it's like a secondary check. So those are 3 ways that you can double check if the genre matches for the person you're sending to. And those are the strongest steps you can take for your match. The second one to look at is the approval percentage of that outlet. Some curators approve 30% or more, and some curators approve 1% or less. For me, the sweet spot is in between those. Anywhere between 2% to 29% is okay. The problem with a curator who shares more than 30% is that they're probably oversaturating their audience and they're not going to be able to move the needle as far. The problem with sending to someone who has a below 1% approval rate is that you have a 99% chance of being rejected. So you're almost pissing your money away. And many of those curators have some of the biggest influence. I can think of a German YouTube channel called Dynamic. Jay is the guy who runs that. He's actually helped SubmitHub with a few UI things. And I believe he has a below 1% approval rate. Also, Cloud Kid, are they German?
I'm not sure, but I know them, yeah.
I think Cloud Kid's also German. Another channel with less than 1%. If you get picked up by those guys and they put your song on their YouTube, you're going to get hundreds of thousands of views, if not millions. It's huge. But the reality is that those YouTube channels are only uploading 2 or 3 songs per week. Oftentimes, they're uploading songs from their own labels. And so for you to be one of the submissions that they actually choose is next to none. So you're really gambling against the odds there when you submit to someone who has a less than 1% approval rate. If you do have the money to burn and you're sending to 30 or 40 or 100 curators, it's definitely good to sprinkle a few of those guys in there. But you have to set your expectations that if someone has a 2% approval rate, that means 98% of the time they say no. And typically that's because they're getting lots of submissions and they don't share as much.
Do you think that, or is there a difference between submitting in bulk to many different curators, bloggers, etc., or is there a benefit of submitting one by one and really dive also in the in the quick pitch to really dive into that specific outlet? Is there some indication?
The only benefit you could possibly have is on the quick pitch side, in that you can customize your messages, but it's an incrementally small one.
Okay.
I know that when someone sends me a song and it says in the quick pitch, Jason, or hey, Indie Shuffle team, or whatever, it helps a bit, but at the end of the day, it's still just the song that matters to me. One of the best techniques you can use as a power user of SubmitHub, so someone who has a label or a PR team or has just submitted a lot of songs, is to take your previous approvals, send to them again, and also send them a message through the chats, because you likely have a chat that exists between them from your previous approvals. Don't send them the song in the chat, but tell them that you've submitted it to them. And that's far more effective than a quick pitch will ever be. When I get a message from an artist that says, hey, I just sent you a new song, hopefully you can check it out, I actually really enjoy that, because they're not trying to send me the song through the chat. They're respecting the process that I like to use, which is going through my SubmitHub submissions. Plus, I have a history of liking their music. And so when someone does that, one of the first things I'll do is I'll go straight to my feed, I'll look for that song, and I'll save it so that I can give it a much more focused listen later. So that's got to be one of the most effective techniques I've seen used by any artist. And I would say that's far more effective than the tailoring of the quick pitch.
Awesome. Influencers are also quite new on your platform, and I personally think that there's a lot of power in influencer marketing. Do you see that as well, or do you have other experiences?
I'm pretty excited about this, because I'm going to be rolling out a huge overhaul of the influencer side in hopefully the next few days. I'm knee deep in coding it, but the idea is that we're going to be spinning out influencers into a separate category, and we're going to be putting a bit more emphasis on TikTok as well. So we've been signing up a lot of Instagram influencers. One of the reasons we focused on that to begin with was that TikTok didn't have as broad a distribution of music as Instagram did. So put another way, Instagram's database was far more connected with all of the distributors, and I think TikTok was still trying to work out some deals. At this point, I think TikTok's at a point where pretty much every distributor also uploads to TikTok, which means that there's pretty good coverage of the songs on TikTok. And what I really like about TikTok versus Instagram is that with TikTok, you watch a video, you see the song at the bottom, you can click on the song, and you're taken to a feed that's full of other videos for that song. And that's kind of cool, especially as an artist, to see all these other people making videos about you. The downside of Instagram stories, on the flip side, is that they're 24 hours, they're temporary. There's no way to see them all at the same time. You don't have much to show for it at the end. And for me, I worry that Instagram isn't a platform that people are going to for music, whereas TikTok has a lot more focus on the music itself. So we currently have 250 active Instagram influencers, some of whom share to TikTok. But for these guys, there's a bit of a fundamental issue, and it all comes down to payola. So I assume you're familiar with payola. But for those listeners who aren't, it's something I referenced earlier in this conversation, which is when someone shows up and says, here's $10, will you cover my song? And they say, okay, cool. Or even worse, when a curator says, I'll only cover your song if you pay me $10. But basically, it's the exchange of money for guaranteed placement. And in the influencer industry, there's this expectation that if you want to feature on my TikTok or my Instagram, you're going to pay me. And that's a bit of a hurdle to get across. And that's what my new overhaul is going to be addressing. So the idea is that it's going to cost the same for submitters to be sending to them. Heck, I might even do it cheaper. But the influencers at the end of the day are going to get paid more for sharing, if that makes sense. And the idea here is to incentivize them to share more. And especially for the TikTokers, it's for many of them, when we say, cool, you earn 50 cents for declining and 50 cents for approving, they go, wait, you expect me to get up in front of a camera and dance to the song for 50 cents? And we go, no, but think about it differently. Like, you've you've already rejected 20 songs. You've said yes to this one. So it's actually more like you've earned, $12 for sharing that song. And then they go, oh, yeah, okay, I guess. Still. But it feels different, right? It feels very different. Right. And so what we're actually going to be doing is saying, okay, instead of getting 50 cents for declining and 50 cents for approving, you're going to get 25 cents for declining. And every time you decline a song, we're going to put 25 cents into a little pot for you so that your approvals are now worth a lot more. And it's a little bit more complicated than that, but at the same time, I'm trying to make it really simple for them to understand. When a song comes through, their decline button is going to say 25 cents and their approve button will say $10. And I'm going to come up with that number for their approve button based on what their approval percentage is. So if they approve 75% of their songs, that number is going to be lower because otherwise we'd be losing money. And if they approve 10% or 15% of their songs, that amount of money will be at its highest. If they only approve 1% of their songs, it's no additional benefit to them. Oh, it's a bit complicated.
Do you do that only for those influencers, or is that for all music outlets?
Only for the influencers.
Okay, so like to incentivize to get more of them.
Yeah, and so one of the other problems we've had with influencers is that they're not very good at expressing themselves with words. So bloggers tend to come from a surprising, right? But like a 16-year-old girl from Spain who's really good at shaking her bum on the camera is probably not good at giving you a critique about your song. And so we're going to be getting rid of the feedback element for influencers and replacing it with something a bit more like hot or not. I don't know if you played with that at all on SubmitHub.
Yeah.
But it's a sliding scale where you as a submitter will say, hey, can you rate me on the artwork, the beat, and the vocals? And then they'll do a sliding scale on those and hit decline. So it should be a lot easier for them. So we're basically saying you get paid less, but you don't have to work as much. And you get paid more when you do actually share, because we recognize that's where you put the effort in. And it's a bit of a conflict, right? Because there's another platform called MusoSoup, which was created by a SubmitHub blogger, or actually SubmitHub publicist and blogger. Their entire platform is based around payola, but the argument that they make is that a blog has to spend time and resources writing about you. So in any other part of the world, in any other profession, they would get paid for that. So why is it in the music industry that it's so taboo to pay them for it? And that's why I do have the conflict, because I believe strongly that payola is bad because it sort of removes some of the meritocracy from it. Songs are no longer judged for how good they are, but who can pay the most money. And here I am trying to come up with a solution that sort of flips it on its head. But the reason I think this is cool is because the influencers are getting paid more for sharing, but you as a submitter are not paying them more for sharing. So you're not actually directly influencing their decision to share or not. You don't have any control over that. So you can't come along and say, well, I'm going to give you $20. It's just not going to work like that. So it's a fine balance there. But to answer your question, I think there's a lot of potential in influencers, particularly with TikTok. And I think that the pitfall of Instagram is that most of them are sharing on Instagram stories, which are temporary.
Smart, man. That sounds amazing. As we're talking about features, is there anything that you can give us, like a sneak peek, any future projects, features of SubmitHub that we can expect?
What, so that wasn't satisfying enough?
No, not at all, but you really got me hooked with that.
That's the coolest one we're working on right now. And it does extend a little bit further, because once you spin out these influencers and create the ability to send to them as a separate category, you can actually open it up to different things besides just music. One thing we're seeing is that a lot of the Spotify playlist on SubmitHub are using Instagram advertising to try and keep their audience engaged and active and keep growing, because let's face it, Spotify is not helping them. So one idea that Dylan came up with was that the Spotify playlisters themselves could be trying to pitch their playlist to the influencers in hopes that the influencers would share their playlist. And one of the longer term visions I've had here is that someone could come along and pitch a type of alcohol or an e-cigarette or some t-shirts or some shoes or whatever to this category of people. So you're taking this model of pitching to micro influencers, and instead of saying, approaching an agency where they say, cool, well, it's $500 per share. We've got a completely different model that disrupts the system and allows you to reach all these people differently. But that's not in the near future. The feature I'm most excited about for the near future is something I've already partially developed for our backend, but we call it tasks internally, or tasks if you're American. Mm-hmm. It's a way for us to handle a lot of the things that we have to do on SubmitHub. So one of the best examples is applications. We have 20 to 40 curator applications per day, be they Spotify playlists, record labels, blogs, etc. Mm-hmm. And we've got a team of 3, Dylan, Jamie, and Carrie, who are reviewing each of those applications to see whether there's a good fit for them to join SubmitHub. And for years, we've been doing that by email. But about 2 months ago, I coded a system that allows all of those to come through a task management. Like I built an in-house task management system where we can leave each other notes, change the status of things. You can approve something with the click of a button. There's templates you can use, all sorts of cool stuff. So it's working really well for us on the back end. And the next step is to actually transition that into something that the consumers interact with a bit more for customer support. And you might have noticed, but for the last 5 years, I've been doing most of the customer support myself. Mm-hmm. And that distracts me a lot. So,
I believe that.
Yeah. It distracts me. It holds me back from doing all of the coding that I want to do. It's a really good way for me to keep in touch with the issues and the pain points and the requests and the feature suggestions that people have. But I'm not awake all the time and I'm not online all the time. And it's probably better for my mental health and my family's health if I'm not online all the time. So what the plan is to outsource our customer support to SubmitHub's power users. The people who are very familiar with the platform and know it well will be able to answer customer support questions and get paid for it. And this will come hopefully still this year, but it will allow people to get 24/7 customer support. I don't have to be there. I can be asleep. That's fine. So that's the next project. And I hope that works out well. After that, I'll probably start to look at things like album submissions. People have wanted that since I kicked off the platform. There's Sound Better, which is a platform that Spotify recently acquired that allows you to buy help with production, mixing, whatever. And so that is a marketplace in a way. And there's definitely an opportunity to set up a marketplace on SubmitHub, be it for artwork design or help mixing, etc. And so I've got that in the back of my mind. And I need to keep giving some love to Hot or Not. I mean, that was something that I built in 3 days. I just got stoned and had this burst of inspiration. I built Hot or Not, and it's sort of like the ugly stepchild of SubmitHub in that it doesn't get as much love as it should. But there's like 10,000 votes per day going through it. So I know I need to give that. There's some potential to be harnessed on that. So that'll also be coming. But over the next week or two, it's this influencer revamp.
That really sounds amazing, man. Everything sounds amazing. Thanks so much for your time, for your information, for your input. That really means a lot to me. And I think a lot of musicians can really benefit from this. Thanks so much for your time and all the best for you and your platform. Thank you.
Cool. My pleasure, Yannic.
Das war der zweite Teil der 16. Episode von How to Make It, dem Podcast für Musiker, die wirklich etwas erreichen wollen. Ich bin mir sicher, dass du aus dieser Folge extrem viel mitnehmen konntest. Wenn das so ist, dann lass doch gerne eine Bewertung da und teil die Episode mit anderen Musikern, die davon profitieren könnten. Vielen Dank für deinen Support und bis zum nächsten Mal. Ciao.